All right, guys, welcome to Wayne's World Garage. It's hump day. It's the Ides of March, March 15th, and we're heading off to the sawmill this morning. We had a couple logs here to cut today. We'll see if we get her done. Yesterday, Phil, Alan, and I went to the woods, and this is this white oak that we cut down, well, maybe a month and a half ago. It died last year. Well, just in case you missed us dropping this tree, here it is one more time. We did this on January 2. It's a pretty good sized white oak, but sadly, it's pretty rotten on the inside. Didn't quite figure that out at first, but we got her down safely, thanks to Al hitting the wedges in there pretty hard. But we got a good notch in it, and it came down, and nobody got hurt. The tough part here is dragging this guy out because he's across the creek. But I'll just watch this guy coming down, because he's pretty, it's a pretty good show watching this guy hit the ground.
It is starting to.
Break. Yeah. Here.
There it goes. There it goes.
Maybe.
Yeah, it's going.
Yep. Convert.
Look at that. It even split itself up for you.
We cut these down. One of the guys wanted some 10-foot boards, so we had been bringing 8-foot boards, but now we're going to bring some 10-foot boards. And they're nice sized logs. They look pretty straight. They're pretty straight, and hopefully he's trying to make a 24-inch tabletop out of them. We'll get enough pieces of wood for this guy. Unfortunately, we cut one of these a little bit short, so one of them is not 10 foot, but the other is 10 foot. So we'll see how it goes today. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. All right, well, we made it to the sawmill. Looks like Wayno's the only one here. So let me start unloading these guys. Well, of course, as soon as I said Wayno's the only one here this morning, Pete shows up. And Pete could see the logs already coming in on the trailer. So he pulls his truck over, and we'll yank him off with that. And Pete's a good sport. We'll run over and get the Tiger tractor, and we'll get these 2 logs loaded up on our rack or whatever you want to call it, so we can get them cut today. So works out pretty well. On with the program. Thank you, Pete. So this video is going to be a little bit different than all the rest of them. We'll get to cutting in a few minutes, but I do want to make sure you all know when we start cutting logs on a sawmill, that's a fair amount of work. But to get to the point where we're cutting logs takes a lot of work. We got to drop the trees. I didn't show you the video of us dragging them out of the woods, but you drag them out of the woods and you put them in a trailer, bring them to the sawmill, unload them, put them on a rack. So there's a lot of things which have to happen before we actually start sawing wood. Well, as you can see, we've got 2 of these oak logs, these white oak logs loaded up. And Doug's actually got the shorter one. It's like 9 foot, but this was almost at the top of the tree. It was like 35 or 40 feet up. And you can see right where that little rotted spot is, there's where a big branch came out. So he's going to cut that off first. But Doug and I, had this big discussion. We played rock, paper, scissors, and figured out he was going to cut this log and I was going to cut the next log. And it kind of works out pretty well. But the sawmill's working great. Take note, look at the galvanized steel and look at that new head block. I'll show it to you. I'll point that out to you so you can see it. But it seems to be working out pretty well. So shockingly, as we do this more and more, we're getting a little bit smarter here. And what we've all realized is once you get a flat side on the log, we'll have a much better product if we can take the effort. And it takes a little bit more effort to roll it so that flat side now is on the bottom of our knees or our ways or whatever you want to call them. But basically it's flat. And that way everything is perpendicular to the saw, which we did check this week when we put things back together. And that kind of works out pretty well. And if anyone thinks rolling these logs is easy, give us a holler. So one of the things Doug and I are discussing here, we're actually going to vote on it. No, just kidding, is the set works. And the set works is a lever he's pulling forward, which pulls a log forward and tells us what size board we're getting. It's got a whole bunch of little holes in it, and I believe they're pretty accurate. When I was cutting, they were pretty accurate. Although, Doug's right, if you're cutting the larger piece of wood, like 2 inches, they're off for some reason. So we got to check that out. But the smaller ones, when I set it to 1 inch, it cuts perfectly well at 1 inch. So that's a story of another video. So certainly rolling these guys and making them into cants is a lot of the hard work. And the sawyer, who's actually pulling that lever there to move the knees forward and back, that's a little bit of workout also. It's a heavy log. It's white oak. This is, it's 9 or 10 foot long. The next one's a little bit longer, but it's a pretty good sized log. So it takes a little bit of effort. But Doug finally gets to the point where he's got a nice square cant here. And after he gets this nice cant, we'll take a look at it and we'll figure out what we want to do. The goal here, remember, is we're trying to saw boards for somebody to make a table with, and they want a 2-inch thick tabletop. So what we've just agreed to do is make 6-inch wide boards, or really 6 inches, about 2 inches thick, and it'll be white oak. The bad news is you'll see some of this wood is rotten. So we didn't know that when we cut the tree down. Well, it was dead, so maybe we should have. But there's a little bit more rot in this tree than we were hoping. But it still works out, because all we need really is 4 or 5 nice clean boards, and we've got way more than that. So now it's coming up on the easy part. Doug's got this figured out, so he's got 2 nice 6-inch cants, and we'll lay those guys down and start cutting some boards out of them. 2 inches thick, about 6 inches wide. As I said, sadly though, there's a little bit of rot on the inside of some of these, so not all the boards are perfect, so we'll just end up throwing those in a scrap pile. But once we've got the cants made, we can start flying, and things go pretty quickly right after this. All right, well, Doug had his fun for the day. Now it's time for me to cut my log and let me have a little bit of fun too. So just out of interest, this log here is about 10 foot 6 inches long, and it came from the lower part of the tree. The one Doug was cutting came up a little bit higher, so there was a couple branches in it, and that's, I think, why we saw a little bit of rot. But this log is pretty clean compared to the last one. So if anybody's got an automatic log turner, they have any interest in donating or giving away at a very reasonable price, let us know, because as you can see, these are a little bit heavy. They probably weigh 1,500 pounds each, and they're a little bit difficult to turn, but we do get it done. So it turns out this is a pretty nice part of the log. It's 10 foot 6 inches long. It's long enough for what the guy's looking for, and I believe we're gonna get some pretty good pieces of tabletop boards for him. So we've got the cant almost done. It's a pretty good sized cant, and once we get it done, we'll just whip out some boards. He's also looking for some 1 inch thick boards too, so you'll see we cut them down too. All right, well, we finally got to the spot where I've got a big cant, and it's, gee whiz, it's got to be 12 inches by 14 inches or something like that. It's a nice sized piece of white oak. It's beautiful wood. So I'm still scratching my head a little bit on our set works. And a set works is that thing I just adjusted the pin in. Sorry you can't see that very well. But it should be pretty accurate. It's designed to be accurate to, I think, to almost a 1/16 of an inch. Or maybe even a little bit better than that. So what we're going to do, it's hard to actually play with things like this and experiment with it when there's tons of people around. So we'll come back on one of the off days and we'll figure this thing out. And then we'll get it working as it should be working. So I think between Doug, myself, and the entire team, we're probably overachieving because we really are just trying to make one big tabletop. Not we, but the guy who wants some of these boards, which is 24 inches wide. So we got plenty of extra ones cut, but some of them aren't perfect, and we really want some nice perfect boards. Some of this wood looks pretty darn good, some of it's not so good. Regardless, it's white oak, which is the Maryland state tree, as most of you probably know by now. And it's also very, very rot resistant. It's a pretty good wood to work with, kind of hard, but it works out well. So, and the first slice through is really just a shave and cut to make sure our saw is 100% perpendicular to the cant, and that way we've got nice square boards, which we do. And the good news is, as I'm doing this, it shaves off an even amount of the cant all the way down from the start to beginning, from the start to the end. So that's exactly what we want to see. So that's a really good thing. So now what I'm doing is the guys who wanted this, they wanted some 1-inch thick boards. Our setworks work very well for this, so I usually just have to move this pin back to the number 5 position. And once I do that, I'll do a double check, make sure we look good, and we'll be cutting 1-inch boards. So the rest of this cant will be 1x6s, and hopefully we'll get 4 or 5 nice ones out of it, 6 or 7, and that way they can make their 24-inch wide, whatever they want to make it, it's 24 inches wide, which is 1 inch thick. So that's what we're doing. Well, that's about it for today's show. We've got plenty of tabletop boards cut, and I think most of them came out pretty good. The ones that are not so perfect, we just put in the firewood pile, and people take them home for firewood. So thanks so much for watching. Hope you liked this show. If you did, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and tell your friends about it. We're going to go back one day this week, and we'll probably put a small log on there and double check things here, especially on our setworks, just to make sure we got that thing calibrated right. Not exactly sure how to calibrate it. I know there's 3 little levers that you flip in and flip out to make the boards heavy or light, and we know all about that, but just to double check that things are on track. But anyway, thanks so much for watching, guys, and you take care and have a great week.